Mr. Chairman, I want to echo the comments of Senator Lee about Dale Ho. You know, Senator Lee went through erudite constitutional history of this country, laying out the problems with Mr. Ho. I'm going to talk about something more fundamental. Everyone in this committee knows the sorts of people that should be judges. We know the temperament that we expect of judges. And everyone in this committee knows Dale Ho doesn't have that temperament. You know, I will confess to some frustration sitting here, because whatever I say, whatever Senator Lee says, whatever any other Republican says, not going to matter. Every Democrat on this committee is going to vote for this nominee, as you have for every radical nominee that the Biden administration has put forward. Whether it was the number 3 position at the Department of Justice, one of the leading advocates for abolishing the police, whether it was the head of the Civil Rights Division, one of the leading advocates for abolishing the police, whether it was Rachel Rollins, a district attorney who refused to prosecute the law and issued a memo instructing her prosecutors not to prosecute violent crime. We now see violent crime and homicide skyrocketing across the country. And yet it doesn't matter what we say. Every Democrat just... I will commend the Democratic senators for party discipline. We even saw last week 44 Democrats willing to filibuster to prevent sanctions on Russia while Russia is preparing to invade Ukraine. Never mind the irony that this is simultaneously while Democrats are giving speeches calling the filibuster a Jim Crow relic while they're filibustering, which is a level of gymnastic flexibility remarkable even for the United States Senate to be doing it simultaneously. But when it comes to, and I would note, by the way, in the previous administration, we had a Republican administration. Republicans in the Senate rejected numerous nominees. If there were concerns with nominees, there are members of this committee, there are members of the Senate who said no. Democrats don't say no. It doesn't matter what wild-eyed loon this White House nominates. Like lemmings, Democratic senators vote for him. And by the way, when I say wild-eyed loon, you would think that's some hyperbole. Well, I can tell you how Mr. Ho describes himself. He didn't quite say wild-eyed loon. He described himself as a, quote, wild-eyed leftist. That's his own self-assessment. Not only that, here's what he wrote in his church newsletter. Quote, Dale, do you do what you do because you want to help people? That'd be good. Or because you hate conservatives. And here's his answer. Anger can in fact be a tremendous source of power. Now I want you to pretend for a second that you're a New Yorker who's a conservative. They do actually exist. They may be in witness protection, but they do actually exist. You're a conservative in New York, and you find yourself in Judge Ho's courtroom, someone who describes himself, he writes in his church newspaper how much he hates conservatives. Are you going to get a fair shake? Look, the Senate is a place where the shoe is always on the other foot. Turnabout's fair play. I'm just going to ask Democrats here to think for a second how you would feel if a Republican president nominated someone to be a judge who describes his motivation is that he hates liberals. How would you feel if you appeared as a lawyer in a courtroom of a judge who says, I hate liberals, and not only that, that anger is his source of motivation? Would you expect a fair shake? You know, all of us have known lawyers who want to be judges. We've all known lawyers who've spent years hoping to be a judge, trying to build the kind of career where they could be nominated to be a judge. That's not Mr. Ho. Mr. Ho, in the last 2 years, has managed to personally insult on Twitter Senator Blackburn, Senator Cotton, Senator Hawley, Senator Lee, and Senator Cornyn. I have to admit, I feel kind of offended that I got left out of his insults. Apparently, I'm not doing my job well enough. I don't know of another nominee to this committee who has gone out of his way to personally insult as many members of this committee. That's extraordinary. You know what that isn't? That isn't a lawyer who's hoping to be a judge, who's trying to live a careful life, who's trying to be buttoned down, who's trying to avoid the sorts of things that are bad to confirmation. And you know what? The frustrating thing as I say this is not a Democrat on this committee cares at all. In just a few minutes, you're all like Pravda going to go, yeah. And the turnaround, there'll be another Republican president. And just wait and see. I hope it doesn't happen. But you may see a judicial nominee who's personally insulted and ridiculed 3, 4, 5, 6 Democratic members of this committee by name just a year or two before they were nominated. Will that piss you off? It should. I actually would hope the Republicans on this committee would show enough dedication to principle to exercise advise and consent. I don't understand why Democrats don't do that. Look, the Republicans in the Senate are very proud of the judges that were nominated and confirmed to the court. But when there were people who were concerned, everyone in this committee remembers John Kennedy's withering cross-examination of the poor fellow in this committee, that it will be taught in confirmation schools 100 years from now not to go through that. Is there even one Democrat willing to say to anyone, how about the guy that describes himself as a wild-eyed leftist who is motivated by his hatred for conservatives and demonstrates it by going out of his way to insult multiple conservatives on this committee? That'd be a good place to start. I promise you won't be excluded from the Democratic Club when you go party at night. But the Senate has to have an actual independent voice and not be a rubber stamp for radicals. And I do know that members who serve on this committee, at least when you say yes to serving on this committee, part of it is because you believe in the importance of an independent judiciary. You believe in the importance of judges that have judicial temperament, that will be fair, that will give you a fair shake, whether they are of your political stripe or the opposite. I just ask you again, how would you feel about appearing as a lawyer, or even worse, as a litigant, as a party? How would you feel as a criminal defendant in a courtroom where the judge in black robes has said he hates liberals, and that he also said that righteous indignation can provide a sense of moral clarity? You know, I don't want my judges with righteous indignation having a sense of moral clarity and deciding that half of the country needs to be punished. You're comfortable with that because you don't describe yourselves as conservatives. But you know what? A judge is supposed to be fair to everyone. So I ask you, would you feel you would get a fair shake from a judge who said, I hate liberals, that righteous indignation gives me clarity, that anger can be a tremendous source of power? Okay, Judge. That's not how our judiciary is supposed to work.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. I'd like to enter into the record a letter from Robert Smith, dated November 24th of 2021. Mr. Smith, in that letter, describes himself as a man who served as judge of the New York Court of Appeals, the state's highest court, from 2004 to 2014. Dale Ho was my clerk, he writes, in 2006 and 2007, and we've remained in touch since then. Mr. Smith says, I was appointed to the bench by a Republican governor and often considered a conservative judge. And he writes, Dale Ho, as his career path makes clear, has strong progressive convictions. This could easily have made for some tension in our chambers, but it did not. Not because Dale was shy in expressing his views, but because he knew how to do so appropriately and respectfully.